Good morning, traders. I'm Dennis Dick.
And I'm Joel Elkanah, and welcome to Wednesday's wacky edition of Pre-Market Info.
And we have movers here this morning, and the S&P future is actually crawling up just under the all-time high. There got up to 95 and a quarter. That high 95 and a half, so just a quarter point under there, but lots of good earnings reports. We'll have to see if we can drive it through there. Joel, what are the technicals saying?
Well, we'll just mention for like the 30th time a potential double top here in the market. 95 and a half yesterday's high, 95 a quarter so far in the pre-market. So keep an eye on that level, and then off to the races 1700 perhaps after that. Coming back on the downside, major support at the 1685 and a half, 86 level. Monday and Tuesday's lows hit 87 in the pre-market. So still good to go north here in the S&Ps.
And we've got Apple reported earnings last night, and they beat on the top, they beat on the bottom, and they are rallying $20. So, Apple, Joel, how are those calls? I thought you were going to buy those
The
calls.
You mean the 435s that I was looking at, and then the 430s, and then the four and a quarters?
as
I
the,
tell you,
as the stock sold off yesterday.
yeah, they kept on getting cheaper and cheaper, and boy, the street was really leaning the wrong way on that one, huh? They were
They
just
really
they,
were, yeah. The sell-off
yeah,
ahead of earnings, people were scared to go into it, and look at this. They just come out, and actually, this is all about sentiment, eh? Because last couple times, Apple comes out and they disappoint. Here they do, they beat on the top, they beat on the bottom. Good enough. Let's rally this stock. And $20 it goes. So it's all about expectations coming in, and expectations weren't that high, and they came out and beat those lowered expectations, obviously, and the market and stocks off to the races.
Okay, just a couple parameters to look at for Apple. 442 was your after hours high. That level coincides with your June 11th high of 442.76. We're only $3 away from there, so that's really your first identifiable support. Coming back on the downside, that 435 level was pretty important last week. We had a couple tops there, and then the market sold off. So I'll use that 435 as support. Good to go to the upside as long as we hold 435.
It's such a crazy market when it does open, though, because if you look like at a stock like Travelers yesterday, where it opened up, or actually it opened down, but in the pre-market it blew away the report, was trading up to $89 in the pre-market, and just gave, or actually 88.75. Gave it all back right before the open, and then ended up opening down and just kept going down. So it can be a wacky market. Like, this is basically the type of market where if you have the earnings report ahead of time, if you had inside information, sometimes it wouldn't even be profitable to profit from that, because it's shocking that a stock like Travelers can report that good of a quarter and still go down. So it's wacky market there. Obviously, you've got to look at what Apple is doing when it opens at 9:30. Look at which way it's leaning, obviously off the hop. If it starts to open and starts to crater right away, then you got to be careful with it. So basically, that you can get a lot of information that first 5 minutes of actual trading, when all the real volume comes in, to see if they're going to keep this thing running, or if this is going to open up near the highs and try to give some back. So use that first 5 minutes as an indicator. Even DuPont, you're bringing up the chart of that yesterday. Same story. I had a good report. They ran it over the $60 hurdle that I was like leaning on. Got up to 60.40, and obviously I wish it wouldn't have, got up as high as it did there, and then gave it all back. And a lot of times what you see, they take it through a key number, hit some stops, and then tank it, and that's what DuPont did. And interesting where that DuPont closed, right at 57.12, which is just off the support level where it had like a double bottom going on there, and the whole, actually almost like a triple bottom, that whole 56.90 area, and that's where it's trading in the pre-market too. So it's at a critical support, that DuPont, after being up $3 yesterday.
Yeah, like you say, the first 10, 15 minutes, I guess when we were arguing about that DuPont yesterday, we were both kind of right, because you said it's going to, get up there above that 60 and shake everybody out, and then it came crashing down. But, boy, I don't have the feeling that Apple's going to, do the old pop and drop
I
on
don't
that.
think so.
A lot of people still short the stock, and, we'll see what happens at 442, 442.76. If you're have a short-term target here, looking to take it home, that'd be the first level of resistance to look at.
Everybody's had the hate on for Detroit. Let's give some love to the Motor City, though, because Ford here rallying significantly in the pre-market, up on 2 million shares. They blew the numbers away, 45 versus 37, lifting their full year guidance as well. And the stock is trading up 50 cents here in the pre-market to a new 52-week high. So there's some people in Detroit that are actually pretty happy this morning off of these Ford numbers.
Did it really spike down to 16 on that? Was that
I think
just
it's got to be a bad tick.
a
That's
bad
got to
print?
be a bad print. I didn't go and
Um,
look at the tape, but
well, could you tell me how many times in the last like 30 years that Ford has opened up 50 or 60 cents and continued to rally another 30 or 40? I
you
mean,
think it's
this
going to
is
run out of gas, do you?
well, once again, back to all the sellers in the book there. I mean, you think people are waking up and canceling all their GTC orders, all the way along, all the way up there. I mean, here you could get the scenario where, perhaps the, specialists can pick up some cheap stock, 1710, 1720, and then run it up to 750, 1750. But I just can't see going out and, paying up 51 cents on Ford here off the open. I mean, the earnings are good, but this looks like a DuPont scenario to me.
I could argue it the other way, though, too. Look at what GE did. Here's the argument the other way. Remember, GE was the same thing, opening up 40 or 50 cents on a strong report, and it kept running. So it's all about that first 5 minutes of actual trade from 9:30 to 9:35 when the real liquidity comes in. See which way it starts to lean, and then go maybe with the flow. A lot of times that momentum that it gets from that 9:30 open, except in the DuPont case, I guess isn't a good example, but can obviously continue too. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think the first hurdle for Ford, I know it's traded above 1750 in the pre-market. It got up to high 1764. But
Yep.
1750 is a big half number for Ford. I think that'll be the first hurdle. If it can get above there, then maybe it attacks a pre-market high and tries to, obviously work its way up through it and chop through a lot of size, which will be in the 17 handle, and try to sneak its way above, and possibly get up to 18. But I think 17 and a half is the first hurdle for it, and that's the swing number that I'd be using if I'm trading Ford here off the open. You also got a
Just
chart. Okay, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah. No, I just gonna say, look at the GM here. You had multiple highs right around the $37 level. Actually, two of the last four highs were at 36.99, trading above that in the pre-market, up 52 cents. Pre-market high there in Ford at 37 and a quarter. So let's see if the Ford news can finally push GM through 37.
Yeah, and GM's number at 37 is big. I see 100,000 shares there. That's where it's been hanging out, just below it there, topping out multiple times in the 3690s. So 37 is absolutely enormous for GM. I would expect maybe off the hop that the 37 does hold it down. If it can break through that 37, you'd be on a breakout in GM. And you got to remember, GM reports tomorrow as well, so obviously you can get a little bit of an earnings run sometimes ahead of that too. But GM is going to trade off of Ford. I would have Ford on as the indicator today, and if it can get above 37, but watch for that, break above 37, goes up to 37.10, and then comes back through 37. If it breaks out over 37 and starts to go up to 37.10, 37, I don't want to see it come back below 37 again, because a lot of times what happens, obviously, you have those fake outs, which we call them, instead of the breakouts. So when they're really breaking out, you want to see them breaking out. You don't want to see them ticking 10 cents above it and then pulling back and starting to trade below that number again. We want to see a real breakout. But I think 37 is a big number for GM,
Yeah, it is.
just like that 1750 and Ford is a big number for that stock.
I just wanted to add after that GM IPO and the initial took it up to 39.48. The high after that in February of 2011 was 37.23. So adding further significance to that pre-market high right around 37 and a quarter.
There are so many earnings reports here today. We'll try to get through the main ones here, but obviously going to be difficult. You've also got AT&T reported after the bell last night. They disappointed a bit. They missed on the bottom, or they beat on the top line, 32.08 billion versus 31.82 billion. But the bottom line they missed, 67 versus 68, and AT&T has struggled again and again and again at this 36 level. and it's selling off here today now down at 35.49, so it's down 30 cents. If this thing goes into rally mode at all, I would expect that you get some major resistance probably from the close at 35.81 all the way up into the 36 handle. Obviously, if the sell-off continues here, then I would look at yesterday's low, which is where it's trading almost right now at 35.50. It starts to break below there, it starts to open up a bit.
Yeah, this stock, this is looking at the pre-market levels here. The low has been 35 and a quarter. And then if you go to the daily here, this stock has really been look at that consolidation here. And that 35 and a quarter is right at the bottom of this consolidation area. So I'm looking at this thing, I'd be more quick right off the hop. If it doesn't get above 35 and a half pretty quickly, then I think you're going to get down, take out that 35 and a quarter in the pre-market, and perhaps cascade down to the 35 level.
Boeing here flying this morning. Obviously, this stock has just had news and plane troubles, but it continues to shrug off. Despite the big sell-off that we had 7 trading sessions ago, where it ticked under $100 on the concerns of that plane. It's right back up here at new all-time highs again. They report $1.67 versus $1.58, 21.8 billion versus 20.78 billion. So they beat on the top, they beat on the bottom, and the stock is testing that huge 110 number here this morning, and obviously traded through it in the pre-market, but in the regular session that could be a little more of a hurdle.
Yeah, we've got up to 111.20 here, and we've pulled back since hitting that 111.20 level. The stock has held 109, so if you're still trying to play this long off the open, you break down below through 109, then you can probably start to sneak into yesterday's range a little bit. Actually, not even getting yesterday's high was 108.15, but we'll keep an eye on that pre-market high at 111.10.
Also, Caterpillar reporting earnings, and they disappointed here. They missed on the bottom line at $1.45 versus $1.70, so a pretty major miss there for Cat. Also lowering their guidance down to, just looking at the report, it was up at $7, their own guidance, and they lowered it down to $6.50. Estimates were around $6.81, so that is below the analyst estimates as well. So here's a situation where Cat didn't look that great, but although this 83.5 level looks like the pre-market chart, kind of like a double bottom, and it's drifting higher here, so it's only down $1 now. So despite a pretty crappy report, Caterpillar here is starting to show a little bit of life.
Yep, 83.50 pre-market low. You got to rebound up to the $85 level after that. So those are some parameters for the first half hour of trading at least. Looking at the daily, I mean, this chart does not resemble the S&Ps at all. Cat's been in the decline here. Let's look at the daily here, try and get a level. You did have a low below 84 at 83.72. That's 20 cents away from the pre-market low, and you also got a little gap to here to fill between 83.20 and 83.72. So we split that in the pre-market, so we'll use that 83.50 level, and then coming back on the upside, of course, yesterday's low 85.12 will be resistance. Actually, 85.12 and 15 were the low 2 out of the last 3 days, so should be some good resistance for you right there at 85.15.
And this 84.50 number, I just want to highlight this because it has been trading. Somebody is dumping a huge piece in the pre-market at 84.50 because it just continues to trade at 84.50, 10,000 shares, 6,800 shares, 5,400 shares. He's only showing 100 shares, so some type of iceberg order there that he's basically dumping. Just another 9,000 shares just traded at 84.50. So there's somebody that's dumping an absolutely enormous piece here at 84.50. So that number could have relevance in the regular session here as well. So keep that 84.50 in mind. What's that, Joel?
Yeah, just a quick definition of an iceberg order for some of our traders here.
Basically, an iceberg order is an order that just shows the tip of the order for basically. So if they're selling like say 100,000 shares there, they can show it as like 100 shares, and it just keeps refreshing. It just keeps sitting there, and there's just basically that's where they get the iceberg thing from because you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. The order is really much bigger than it's really showing. So it can show you can show 1,000 shares, it can show 2,000, but basically there's a reserve order there. There's more size there than they are showing, and that's kind of what an iceberg order is, and that's what I'm seeing in the pre-market here in Caterpillar. I'm actually, interesting enough, somebody seems to be bidding 84.45 for an iceberg order too, so you got like two icebergs fighting each other for a nickel here in between. So obviously we'll have to see which way that starts to lean. Eventually one of those guys will get taken out, the rest of the order will be gone, and then it might open up in that direction. So
That's high frequency iceberg trading.
yeah, this is high frequency iceberg trading. Usually it's institutions, but moving on here. Anyways, we have a lot of other reports here. Let's go to a disaster stock of the day. Looks like it's going to be Broadcom, and that stock is trading down on their report from last night. They did beat on the bottom line, 70 versus 68. They were light on the top line though, and they also lowered Q3 sales numbers to 2.05 billion to 2.2 billion. Analyst estimates were up at 2.25 billion. And Broadcom, interesting enough, had a very weak day yesterday, and it is continuing down here this morning on 718,000 shares. It is trading down almost 10%, and it is one of your big losers of the day.
We hit, yeah, someone had a little bit of an inkling yesterday, huh? Look at the way that thing got whacked. 28.42 has been the low in the pre-market here. It's starting to get a little bit of a bounce off that. I mean, you can't call it like one of these, rounding bottoms sometimes after a big spike down. But let's see if we can find some support in this thing below the pre-market low. Taking a look at the weeklies here. What's going on here? Wow, even having some support, having trouble on the weeklies here.
2011, you got that 27.59, but that's a ways away. I can find, if I go out here, 20. Oh no, I'm looking at the same 27.
I found one, 28.60.
There you go, July the 20th.
Yeah. So, but hit that, coincide with the pre-market low. So keep an eye, 28.40, 28.60. If not, you could be looking at the $28 level.
Also had VMware report last night, and this is one of your big winners on the day here. The stock is up $10, blew the numbers, 79 cents versus 77. Beat on the top line too. Nomura upgrading the stock here this morning. This is a stock that's always volatile off of its earnings reports. It seems like all the time VMware moves $8 or $10 every time it reports earnings. Doesn't disappoint here. Again, you got another $10 movement in the stock off an earnings report, and it is flying obviously this morning, up 81.60 now. It's up over $10.
81.65. Taking a look at the pre-market high, 81.80, and it's just it's hit that level. It looks like someone's letting some stock go here because for over the last hour or so, it's been holding 81.80. So keep an eye on that 81.80 to 82 level if you're looking perhaps get out of a long here. But I think what's interesting about this stock here is it, had a pretty good sell-off. It rallied up, consolidated around the $70 level. So going back to traded the $80 level. I don't know. Seems a little bit lofty here, but after it's hit 81.80, this thing has not really been able to pull back much under 81.
Just grinding higher. EMC was moving up after hours on the VMware because obviously they own a big chunk still of VMware, so it does trade off of that. They reported their own earnings this morning too, 42 cents versus 42 cents, and EMC is trading up to a new 52-week high here as well, 26.55. So it's blowing through the old 52-week high at 25.60 and blowing through the 26 handle and really off to the races as well.
That's a pretty big move for another, very thick stock. Trades a lot of volume. So let's just keep an eye on the pre-market high, 26.59. We're bumping up against that right now.
And you got to watch VMware. That's what EMC is going to trade off of even more than its own earnings because VMware is so volatile. Just keep that on the screen if you're trading EMC here today. Lilly, one of my favorite stocks there, Joel, reported earnings here. Eli Lilly beat, and they raised the guidance here too. So $1.16 versus $1.01, $5.92 billion versus $5.82 billion. Top line beat, bottom line beat, raising the guidance up to $4.28 to $4.38 for the full year. Guidance was down to $4.05 to $4.15. So Eli Lilly saying a lot of good things here, and the stock is popping $1.50 this morning.
Yep, 53 is the pre-market high. Another 60 cents away from there. Yeah, so keep an eye on that $53 level. That coincides with the June. We had a high in June at 53.05. So kind of coincided with the pre-market high. That 53.05 high was on June 17th. So pre-market resistance coinciding with daily resistance at 53.05.
Pepsi also reported earnings here this morning, and it's trading up 80 cents on their report. $1.31
Oh my
versus
God.
$1.19. You have so many stocks making new 52-week highs here. Well, this one just barely under the 52-week high. Well, actually, pre-market got way above it. But 87.06 is trading below right now at 87. That got as high as 88.69. Is that right, Joel? That seems
Yeah.
People
Yep.
get crazy on these reports. Hey, I'm just trying to go back and find that on the ticker myself. You know what?
Yep.
That actually looks like an outside print. That looks like a off exchange print there. I just see the 100 shares 88.69, so I'm striking that print from the record. I don't like that. I say the high is I'm looking at 87.99 actually. We did have 300 shares trade up there at 808.29. So I guess 87.99 is what I'm really looking at as the high there. But 87's the bogey here. 87.06
Yeah.
was the high on
Yep.
the 18th, and that's the bogey that I'm using if I'm trading this thing.
Right. Yeah. Just looking at there's probably some size in the book there too as well. 87.06 high. Uh, Traded above it, obviously in the cream market. Not on a lot of volume, but let's see if that seller is still present at 87 once the market opens.
Panera Bread, and here's an interesting chart, Joel. PNRA. If you actually look, they disappointed here, but they had a flash crash right before the close. So if actually you can bring up the closer chart there, you'll see in the last 10 minutes of trading, actually, they crashed down, and I don't see that on there for some reason now, but right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's the bar. You see it right in the blue there. So go to the next bar over. You can see the little line right beside it. Actually traded down to $170 on the kisser ahead of the report. This was just a few minutes before the close, and then it rallied all the way back up to 182. So basically, flash crashed down, and then all the way back up to 182. Then they reported earnings, and then it crashed down again from the 182 and went down as low as 169 into 171. So basically, that little flash crash was an indicator that it was going to miss and miss big time. And the numbers $1.74 versus $1.77, and also lowering their outlook too. And the sales were light, so top line miss, bottom line miss, not good for Panera Bread. And that 170, it's traded actually below it, and trading at 171 right now, down $11.
Yeah. Wow. Someone got the heads up on
They
that one,
did,
huh?
I think. It looks
Yeah.
like it.
169 to pre-market low. 170 the low yesterday. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Also 169.58 was the low on back in at the end of April. So there's a couple levels to keep an eye on. Below that, if they're really going to really tar and feather this thing, you do have some major support just below the 165 level at 164.89. But getting a bounce off that 170 level is going to be critical for Panera.
We're running short on time, but quickly, I just want to preview Facebook. They obviously report here tonight, and the stock's trading up 17 cents here. Give us a quick technical here on Facebook, though, Joel, for those guys who are looking to trade this thing today and tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it's kind of had a quiet rally here. Had earnings, finally was able to clear the $25 level. It's kind of was a bogey we were using for a long time in that stock. Looking at the dailies here, double top, actually a triple top between 26.75 and 26.78. So perhaps the seller that was present there last week can get another rally ahead of the $27 level. That would be your resistance. We've had three higher lows, so that's a pretty good, bodes pretty well for the trend. Major support looms at the 25.5 level. You had five lows between 25.45 and 26.65. So a couple major support and resistance levels for Facebook.
S&P futures have come off $1 since we started the show, and they're two and a quarter off the highs now. At 16.95 and a quarter, obviously, is the high on the day, and the 16.95 and a half is the high, all-time high. So that's our bogey, 16.95 and a half. That whole 16.95 area looks like it could provide some resistance still in this as this market tries to grind its way north to 1700. That's our
Right. Yeah. Well,
oh,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, just keep an eye on that, especially if it, early in the session, if they can pop it up, just a couple ticks above that area, and then they come back down through it. It's still a valid area.
that's our show for today, guys. Have a great trading session, and we'll be back with you tomorrow.